Good morning and welcome back. This is World Talks coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Salia Strzemska. The first ever 48-team FIFA World Cup is drawing to a close with the final set to be played today. Over the past month, the tournament has delivered unforgettable drama and heartwarming stories, while also generating its fair share of controversy, both on and off the pitch. To look back at the biggest moments ahead of tonight's final, I'm joined now by our sports correspondent, Jon Carter. Hello, Jon. Delighted to have you with us.
Nice to be here, Sally.
So let's start with last night's third-place playoff between France and England, 4-6. That is a very high score for such an elite game, if you will. How come?
Well, I think it's probably important to put it in the context of the fact it was the fourth playoff. So unlike in the Olympics, where, bronze medals are rather significant and people feel there's a lot to play for, we don't really have that in football. So third place is a bit more relaxed, and that was reflected in the two teams' lineups. For example, England didn't play Harry Kane. And yeah, it was a kind of mixture of first team and a few other players who haven't played so much in this tournament getting a run out. On top of that, it was played in Miami, so in extremely hot and humid conditions. So I think, yeah, it all brought together sort of conditions conducive for attacking football. I rather got the impression that the French team were told by the coach Deschamps, go out there, have fun, play attacking football, put on a show. And then at halftime, they were 4-0 down. And he probably told them, when I told you go out there and have fun, I didn't mean just completely relax. Switch back on, do something. And, the French came storming back, brought it back to 4-3. And but ultimately England prevailed with that lead and were able to counter-attack a lot. So, yeah, I mean, I thought it was great fun. And it did kind of show, I think, what happens for England when they kind of play without pressure. Pressure really counts for a lot, as we saw against Argentina in the semi-finals, when I think they rather crumbled under that pressure.
And speaking of Argentina, all eyes are now on the final between Argentina and Spain. So is this another defining moment for Lionel Messi, or could it also represent a generational shift with Spain's Lamine Yamal emerging as the face of the new era?
Yeah, well, I think it's funny when we talk about that. Is it a defining moment for Messi? I think he's just done it all already. To be honest, many people said 4 years ago when Argentina won the 2022 World Cup that he had now completed football. He literally won every major prize that it was to win, and he'd done it all. And he can now go off onto the sunset and just play a few more years of his career as he was in America. And instead, he's just decided to carry on. And yeah, I think it's remarkable because many people thought, oh, yeah, he will retire. By the time we get to the 26th World Cup, he'll be 39. That would be ridiculous. And yeah, incredibly, he's just been the player of the World Cup again at 39. So, yeah, I think it's a very interesting matchup. Yeah, because the way people have kind of pitted these two teams, I would say, is it's the greatest player of all time versus the most complete and cohesive team in Spain, and that is an interesting. I think it's probably fair to say, sometimes it gets over exaggerated how important one player is to a team, but we've watched all of Argentina's matches, and they are completely dependent on Messi. They get in trouble and they just turn to him, and he pulls out some magic from nowhere. And it happens time and time again. So with regard to the final itself, how is it going to look? How is it going to play out? Well, we kind of have a phrase in England, styles make fights, which is a kind of borrowed analogy from boxing. What we mean by that is that when you have contrasting styles, it makes for a more entertaining matchup. I rather think that actually these two teams despite what I was saying, the greatest player against the strongest team, the way they approach the matches in terms of tactics, um, they are relatively similar. So I think unless we see a very early goal in the match, I'm not sure we're going to have the greatest level of entertainment. Could be a very interesting strategic and tense tactical battle. But both teams like to keep possession. They want to slow the play down. They don't have a lot of fast attacking players, which means they're less able to counter attack. They're just trying to pick holes and bide their time and wait their moment. But nonetheless, I think it would be a very interesting game.
Now, apart from Lamine Yamal, whom we've mentioned, which young players have emerged as the breakout stars of this tournament?
Uh, Yeah, I'm not sure there's like, it depends how we're going to sort of look at breakout because, there's a lot of players who haven't made a big impression on the international scene, but have really come to the fore in this World Cup. Um, and, but I think the majority of those were fairly well established beforehand. So I think the thing is, when you look at the four semi finalists, England, France, Argentina, and Spain, none of them have had like any breakout players. And I think even at the quarterfinal stage, all of those, certainly at club level, are very established players. I would say it's been a bit more of a World Cup in terms of breakout teams as opposed to individuals, which for me personally is far more preferable. Football's a team sport, and it's not about the individuals as much. They're just an element of that. You're awarded less for it's not important who was the player of the tournament, it's who wins the tournament at the end. And so in that regard, breakout teams, I think we could say Norway have been a fantastic example, reaching the quarterfinals. And very small population relatively speaking, and previously at World Cups in the 90s, they were weak, very, very weak teams, incapable of attacking. And now they've shown something really special, incredible with their fans as well. Great spirit. They came back to a hero's welcome back in Norway. And they came very close to defeating England as well. So I think they've been one of the stories of the World Cup. And I know you're very keen, Sally, on Capo Verde as well. And I would say alongside Norway, they have been one of the stories of this World Cup and really a breakthrough. And in fact, very emblematic itself of this expanded 48 team World Cup. Beforehand, everybody was very skeptical. 48 teams, it's way too much. Come on, the standards are going to be lowered. We're going to have these tiny countries. Capo Verde has a population of 600,000. They're going to get absolutely spanked every match. Well, as it turned out, they came very close to knocking out world champions Argentina, eventually losing 3-2. They had a couple of other games which they were great in. And I think really the nicest element to these underdogs, such as Norway and Capo Verde, and several others as well, is that they didn't do it just purely defending, getting 10 men behind the ball, scrapping away, hoping for penalties. They did it by attacking and playing on the front foot. And we really saw that with Capo Verde against Argentina. It was great to watch. They attacked, they took the game to them, and they really won the hearts of, the neutrals as well. And so I think it's the teams that have been the story of this, and they have been the breakout symbols.
Now, John, looking back over the tournament, what have been the biggest surprises or perhaps the most heartwarming stories?
Well, yeah, absolutely. We mentioned Capo Verde. I think there was a lot of goalkeeping performances which have been quite sort of heartwarming. There was a sort of period during the group phase where it seemed that every couple of days there was this new goalkeeper that no one had heard of outside of their own country, who put on an amazing performance. Capo Verde's Vozinha He's a 40-year-old goalkeeper, and nobody outside of that country and maybe his own domestic club had really heard of him. And he produced these incredible performances where he made, record numbers of saves. We had that with the Paraguay goalkeeper. We had it with several others as well. So I think, yeah, that they were very heartwarming. And, so you had this thing with like Vozinha. There was mentioned a lot of post match where there was one particular guy, I forget who they were playing now, but he, I think it might have been Spain, and he, before the tournament, he had an Instagram following of a couple of thousand or something, and he finished the match with 6 million. And it was just this sort of thing of like people taking these players to their heart, and completely unknowns rising to the fore. And I think, yeah, that is the kind of more heartwarming element. When we got down to the real the big hitters in the final four, etc. I think there's not something so kind of heartwarming about that. We know those players, we know what they're capable of, and the expectation is very high. I think it's also impossible not to get kind of swept up in the kind of romanticism of Messi as well, because it's very likely that today, the World Cup final, will quite likely be Messi's last ever major match. Yeah, it looks like he's going to continue playing in MLS in America and so forth. I mean, no offense to MLS, but it's a low key league, and it's gets far less attention outside of America itself. So in one sense, this is the kind of romanticized story. It's Messi, the last ever time he's going to do it on the big stage. And I think everybody's quite caught up in that. And, they might not love the Argentinians, the other players in his team, the way they play, and they're kind of bending the rules and a rather violent approach to things. But I think the vast majority of neutrals can't get help but be swept up by the joy of seeing the world's greatest ever player doing it for the final time on the biggest stage of all. There's something quite magical about it.
And Jon, one last question before we go. Who will win, in your opinion, tonight?
Well, I think the big deciding factor is going to be who gets the first goal. I can imagine a sort of 1-0 or even like a 1-1 and going to penalties or something like that. And I feel if Spain get that first goal, they are on paper, they're definitely a stronger team. So I think you'd probably say the mind would say Spain and the heart would say Argentina, not because of the Argentinians, as I mentioned, but more the kind of the Messi factor. I think, though, that Spain will have a particular game plan for Messi. I think they'll do a much better job than previous teams who've played against Argentina in the past. Let's remember, Argentina have had a very easy run to this final. Apart from playing England, it's been a fairly simple run. Spain have done it the hard way. They've played the best teams, and I think they're going to just edge it tonight. I'm going to go 1-0 Spain.
So let's wait and see. Jon Carter, much appreciated. Thank you. And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TV World.